72 hours. That's the window before another filing drops, another clip leaks, another courtroom bombshell rewrites the entire map of this marriage. And right now, Cardi B and Offset are staring down the edge of it with nothing but scorched bridges behind them. What started as a marriage that rap culture practically canonized has mutated into something nobody, not even their most loyal fans, can recognize anymore. A Florida valet lot turned into a crime scene, a paternity order dropped like a guillotine, a $10 million settlement slapped away like pocket change, and a grimace on a Madison Square Garden stage that said more than any court filing ever could. So pull up a chair, silence your phone, and lock in, because what's about to be unpacked here is not a gossip cycle. This is a full-blown structural implosion between two of the most watched names in hip-hop, and every piece of debris is worth examining under the lamp. Start at the ignition point. Belcalis Marlenis Almanzar, the Bronx-born juggernaut the world knows as Cardi B, and Kiari Condrell Cephas, the Atlanta-bred Migos architect better known as Offset, locked it in back in 2017. A marriage forged in a hotel room, announced to fans after the fact, built on the kind of chemistry that looked unshakable from the outside. And from the jump, it was never quiet. Cheating whispers, public apologies, reconciliations that came packaged with matching tattoos and social media serenades, a revolving door of breakups that always swung shut again because neither of them seemed to know how to stay gone. That cycle became its own currency. The internet learned the rhythm. They'd split. Offset would show up outside somewhere begging on a flower-lined stage, Cardi would soften, and the feed would reset. Rinse, repeat, profit. Then December of 2023 hit different. Cardi hopped on Instagram Live and dropped a sentence that didn't come wrapped in theatrics or decorated with deflection. I've been single for a minute now. Flat. Final. No emojis. No caveat. Fans who had watched this couple's breakup choreography for years knew instantly that wasn't a negotiation. That was a eulogy for the marriage spoken out loud before the paperwork caught up. And the paperwork? That arrived on August 1st, 2024, when her legal team walked into an Atlanta court and filed a petition describing the union as irretrievably broken, with, and this is the phrase that stung, no prospects for reconciliation. This was round 2 for Cardi. She had already filed in Georgia back in September 2020, but dismissed it within 8 weeks because Offset found the right words again. This time, nobody was polishing the words. This time, she meant it. One day before that petition hit, just one, that's when the couple had publicly confirmed baby number 3 was cooking. Blossom Bell Cephas would arrive in September 2024, joining her siblings Culture Kiari, born in 2018, and Wave Set, born in 2021. 3 children, 6 years of marriage, and a divorce filing dropped within 24 hours of the pregnancy reveal. If you're looking for the exact moment the public started to realize this wasn't a publicity dance anymore, that was it. The chronology itself was screaming. By December 2024, the gloves weren't just off, they were set on fire and tossed into the crowd. Offset got a wave of smoke on X, calling Cardi something ugly, accusing her of being, in his phrasing, focused on D. Cardi did not sit with it. Her response was a shotgun blast. Sign the papers. That exchange ripped the filter off everything. The hurt wasn't buried anymore. It was standing at the front door with its bags packed. Offset's attorneys then countered her petition, requesting joint custody while naming Cardi's residence as the primary home for the children. On the surface, clean. Beneath the surface, a minefield. May 2025 detonated it. Offset filed an amended response and inserted a request that landed across the blogs like a meteor. He wanted spousal support from her. Alimony from her. No specific figure attached, but the intention alone was enough to crack the internet open. Examine the financial terrain and the move gets louder. Cardi's valuation sits somewhere between $80 and $100 million, stitched together through touring, Grammy-level catalog, endorsements, her Reebok empire, her Whip Shots vodka line, her executive producer credits, her fashion platforms. Offset's number floats closer to $30 million. That gap isn't a wound. That gap is the playbook, and his legal strategy was leaning directly into it. Cardi didn't absorb it quietly. She opened an X Spaces room and let every ounce of venom pour out on a live microphone, which she said was raw to the point of disturbing, wishing slow death on him, bedbound death, death saturated with thoughts of her. It was the kind of audio clip that doesn't stay on its original platform for more than a few hours before it's bouncing across every timeline on Earth. Listeners didn't know whether to be concerned or transfixed. Possibly both. Then she flipped from volcano to scorekeeper and laid the math bare. She had amended her own petition, removing her request for child support just to move the process faster. Her words, "I feel like I'm tied up." She painted the portrait of an absent father, stood up the kids 3 separate times, saw their newborn blossom roughly 5 times since birth, refused to come visit at the New Jersey house, forcing hotel room reunions with his own children. This was no longer about assets. This was about access, attention, and the emotional gymnastics of divorcing someone who wouldn't let the rope loose. September 2025 brought another revelation, and this one arrived with exhaustion stitched into every syllable. Cardi hopped on another live and offered a sentence that cracked through every previous theory. The only reason she was still legally his wife, she said, was because someone wanted her to cover their taxes. She didn't drop a name. She didn't need to. Then she dropped the detail that hit the hardest. She had checked herself into a hospital, unable to keep carrying it. Her management and label, she said, had staged what amounted to an intervention. Her recording had stalled. Her touring prep had splintered. And she had left, because when your livelihood starts buckling under the weight of a divorce, the divorce has to end or the career will. That confession reframed the entire battle. It wasn't just a couple at odds anymore. It was a woman trying to survive her own legal history. November 2025 hammered in another nail. Reports claimed Offset rejected a $10 million settlement from Cardi, reportedly firing back with a line that read like a mission statement across every hip-hop vlog. He built her brand. He deserves half. Whether that quote was verbatim or paraphrased, it didn't matter. It stuck. It defined the mood. And Cardi's own statements began to shift in tone. She accused him of holding her hostage with his demands. Hostage. She used that word. Not metaphorical anymore. At that point, the divorce stopped being a divorce and became a siege. 1 system filing, 2 careers, 3 children, and an open wound bleeding in public.
Then December hit. New Year's Eve rolling into 2026, and the plot pivoted sideways in a way nobody saw arriving. Celina Powell, yes, that Celina Powell, the one with a documented track record of torching rappers' reputations online, posted a graphic clip she captioned as having made a tape the night before. The video allegedly showed Offset in what can only be described as a compromising situation. Within hours, the thing was scorching through timelines, trending on every app with the comment section. The punchline, the irony, that Powell had already, years earlier, falsely claimed to be carrying Offset's child, a claim both Offset and Cardi shot down, in which Powell herself eventually walked back, admitting to TMZ it had been fabricated. So skepticism was warranted, very warranted. But skepticism doesn't slow a viral clip down. It just adds fuel to the speculation. And the juxtaposition was brutal. Here was a man reportedly asking for alimony from his estranged wife while simultaneously being filmed, allegedly, by a woman with a history of humiliating rappers. Fans had no problem drawing the line. The comment sections wrote themselves. Then came the courtroom. And the courtroom doesn't play with memes. February 25th, 2026, TMZ obtained a court order from inside the divorce file. Offset had requested DNA testing on 2 children. 2. The judge denied the request on 1, the newborn son Cardi had welcomed in November 2025, with her then partner, NFL wide receiver Stefon Diggs. That denial had legal logic behind it, because Cardi and Offset are still technically married, and in many jurisdictions, a married woman's husband is presumed the legal father, regardless of biology. But the second request, that one got granted. The judge gave Offset the green light to pursue paternity testing on another of Cardi's children, widely reported to be Blossom, their youngest, the baby whose birth had bookended their marriage. Let that sit in the chest for a moment. A man who just weeks prior had been linked to a leaked tape drama was now asking a judge to verify whether the baby he publicly claimed was even his. And the court said yes to one of those requests. The same order slaps both Cardi and Offset with a speech restriction, barred from making disparaging or defamatory comments on social media or in interviews. A judge issued muzzle on two of the loudest mouths in hip-hop. Good luck enforcing that. Cardi didn't even pretend to try. Within hours of the order going public, she was online, unfiltered, unbothered by the ink on the restriction. I should have never let him hit again. That was one of the posts. That was the energy. She went scorched earth on his parenting record, accused him of carrying almost none of the expenses for Culture, Wave, and Blossom, claimed he had seen Blossom only a handful of times since birth, and made clear that whatever fatherly affection he was performing in public was not matching the ledger at home. Her anger was surgical. Her receipts, by her telling, were long. But the saga wasn't finished with its plot twists. April 6, 2026. Evening hours, Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Hollywood, Florida. Offset was shot in the valet area during an altercation. Bystander footage captured the chaos, emergency lights slicing the parking lot, guests scrambling, officers descending, and someone lying near the valet stand with another figure leaning over them. The wound was to the leg, non-life-threatening. 2 individuals were detained, and rapper Lil TJ was charged with disorderly conduct tied to the broader incident, though his attorney denied any involvement in the actual shooting. Police described the gunfire as stemming from a personal dispute, not a random hit. For Cardi, the courtroom war went on pause. On tour at the time, she reportedly reached out to Offset while he recovered in a Florida hospital bed. No public statement, no Instagram post, just a private call. And the internet split down the middle. Some called it proof that the feelings never fully died. Others called it the basic human reflex of hearing that the father of your 3 kids caught a bullet. Both reads were valid. Both were probably true. Whatever else had splintered between them, a decade of shared history doesn't evaporate because of a filing. The juxtaposition of that night was almost cinematic. Reports surfaced that Offset had been smiling, posing with fans in the casino lobby just moments before the altercation kicked off, relaxed, at ease. Then minutes later, on the ground with a bullet in him. The shits from celebrity photo op to crime scene was violent in its speed. And for a family that already understood what gun violence can do, Offset's cousin Takeoff was murdered outside a Houston bowling alley in late 2022 over a dice game. The echo was sickening. Less than 4 years between the 2 most recognizable men in Migos being hit in parking lots. 4 years. Let the math land. Cardi stayed quiet publicly through any of her verified platforms. No official statement, no press release. That silence fueled its own chaos. A viral post claimed she had gone live in tears upon hearing the news, but that post was never traced to anything Cardi herself had authenticated. Misinformation filled the vacuum her silence left behind, and by the time the fog cleared, there were 3 competing narratives of how she had reacted, none of them verifiable. That's the modern celebrity paradox. Saying nothing doesn't protect you anymore. It just means someone else writes the story for you. And underneath all of this, the divorce, the paternity war, the shooting, the Powell tape drama, the restraining order, was the Stefon Diggs variable. Cardi had welcomed her 4th child, a son, with the NFL star in the fall of 2025. After the 2026 Super Bowl, they quietly unfollowed each other on Instagram, sparking split rumors that neither addressed directly. And inside had mentioned betrayals, plural. Cardi was reportedly locking in on her music, not interested in emotional maintenance work while on the road. She hinted at it from the stage of her Little Miss Drama tour. Lines about not being out here played with, not being toyed with, not having patience for men who can't keep pace with her. But then, and this is where it turns again, just days after Offset's shooting, Stefon Diggs and his family were spotted dancing through the Washington, D.C. stop of her tour. His mother, his brother, all of them at the after-party venue at Throw Social, and Cardi, at the end of the night, reportedly left the club and climbed into Stefon Diggs' car for the ride out. Reconciliation chatter ignited immediately across every platform. Whiplash doesn't cover it. This is a woman whose estranged husband was shot on a Monday, whose ex-partner was dancing at her concert by midweek, whose paternity case is pending a DNA test, and her tour hasn't lost a beat. The layers compound, they don't unwind. Then came the Madison Square Garden moment, night 2 of the tour. Cardi launched into the chorus from her track Lick, a song that contains Offset's name embedded in the lyrics. And despite her usual skill at swapping the line, she slipped. His name came out, full volume, in front of a sold-out arena, and the cameras caught her grimace. A quick wince, a tightened jaw, a flicker of a woman who realized her mouth had betrayed the months of effort to scrub him from her public script. That face was the entire saga compressed into a single frame.
Because here's the structural truth under all of it. Cardi and Offset remain, at this minute, legally married. The divorce has been winding through Georgia courts since August 2024, nearly 2 full years. A paternity test is looming, spousal support is contested, a shooting just happened, a speech restriction has been issued and immediately ignored. 3 children are caught in the crossfire, a blended family situation is forming on the other side of it, and the 2 principal parties can't seem to close the door because every time they try, something new swings it back open. Take a step back and stare at the wider canvas. What's sitting on that canvas is a portrait of 2 people who built their early careers partly on each other's gravity. She came up through the love and hip-hop lane and into mainstream Grammy-level dominance. He came up through Migos and into solo territory with a guest feature catalog as long as any rapper of his generation. Their marriage was, in its good moments, a partnership of 2 brands stacking on top of each other. And the separation now is the mirror image, the same brand power, same visibility, same loyalty bases, but pointed at each other instead of outward. When 2 empires with that much leverage collide, the shrapnel travels. Think about what the paternity test alone represents. For 6 years, this man celebrated Blossom publicly, held her on red carpets, posted about her on social media, called her his baby girl. And now, in a filing, he's questioning whether she genetically belongs to him. The emotional arithmetic of that move is staggering. Either he believes something he hasn't said publicly, or he's using the request as pressure, a forced negotiating tactic disguised as forensic curiosity. Either read is dark, and the granted portion of that request means a lab will actually run the test, which means sometime in the coming weeks, there will be an answer. And depending on that answer, this saga either closes one chapter or opens an entirely new one that nobody is prepared for. Run through the spousal support angle, too. The narrative that he built her brand is going to get tested in court because the legal standard isn't vibes, it's documented financial contribution. Did Offset finance her tours? No. Did he invest in her business ventures? Not publicly documented. Did he co-own the brand deals that built her valuation? Not on paper. His argument will likely rest on lifestyle contributions during the marriage and on whatever prenup does or doesn't exist. If a prenup was signed, and sources have hinted that one was, the spousal support request may dead end quickly. If no prenup exists, the math gets messier, and Georgia law becomes the battlefield. Either way, every court date will generate headlines. Factor in the Stefon Diggs reconciliation arc. If that's real, if she and Diggs are genuinely rebuilding, then the picture gets even more tangled. Offset would be fighting a spousal support claim against a woman publicly linked, possibly again, to an NFL star with a soft but active social media footprint. The optics alone would shift, and optics drive settlements. Judges don't read the internet, but juries of public opinion absolutely do. And Cardi's public opinion jury has not shown mercy for Offset since the paternity filing dropped. Understand this moment. We are sitting in the final act of a marriage that refuses to be an act. Every time the curtain tries to drop, a new scene starts. A filing, a shooting, a tape, a tour slip, a private phone call after a hospital admission, a car ride into the night with an ex-partner, a grimace on an arena stage. These aren't separate stories. These are the same story, told in fragments across courtrooms, social media, hospital parking lots, and after parties. And the internet sits at its desk taking notes, making memes, stitching clips, and coming to its own verdict long before any judge puts a signature on anything. That's the backdrop. That's the context. That's what makes this divorce different from every other celebrity split, because it isn't just playing out in the news, it's playing out in real time, hour by hour, with millions of eyes cataloging every move. So what comes next? The DNA test result on Blossom. That's the shoe that hasn't dropped yet. Whatever that envelope opens, the paternity filing will either be vindicated or obliterated. If Blossom is confirmed as his, the whole request looks like a stunt, and the public sentiment against him will calcify. If the result comes back otherwise, the narrative explodes into territory nobody is prepared to process, and Cardi's last 2 years get reread through a different lens. Either outcome reshapes the remaining legal battles. Then there's the spousal support hearing. A judge eventually has to rule on whether his request has merit. That ruling will set the financial tone for whatever settlement eventually gets reached. And then there's the shooting investigation in Florida, still unfolding, still generating new details day by day. Lil TJ's involvement or non-involvement will be sorted through court filings, and the full motive behind the valet area altercation will likely surface eventually because personal disputes in public places rarely stay sealed for long. And in the background of all of that, Cardi keeps touring, her album keeps selling, her arena dates keep selling out, Offset keeps rapping, keeps posting, keeps showing up in headlines. The machinery of both of their careers keeps running whether the marriage is signed off or not, which is exactly why neither of them can fully walk away from the other. Their professional gravity keeps pulling them back into the same orbit even as their personal lives try to escape it. Watch the small details in the coming weeks. Watch which one of them files what next. Watch for the next leaked clip. Watch for the next courtroom update. Watch how Diggs and Cardi's reconciliation either consolidates or collapses. Watch whether Offset resurfaces publicly post-shooting with a new posture, a new PR strategy, or the same playbook. Watch whether that judge's speech restriction gets enforced or laughed at. Watch the tour slip moments. Watch the silent moments. Watch the private calls that somehow become public within 48 hours. Because here's the final piece of the puzzle. The two people at the center of this are not who they were when they said their vows in 2017. They are battle-tested, public-worn, multi-millionaire parents now, with 3 kids between them and a roster of new partners, court dates, and emotional residue that reads like a novel. And the question isn't whether they'll finish this divorce. The question is whether any divorce, no matter how completely signed, can actually dissolve the kind of bond, for better or for worse, that these two have carved into each other over 7 years and 3 children. The bet from here? That bond doesn't dissolve. It just transforms into something else. Co-parents who still argue, ex-spouses who still trend together, 2 public figures who remain permanently mentioned in each other's biographies. That's the real ending of marriages like this. Not a final filing, not a judge's gavel, but a slow recalibration into a new kind of permanent entanglement. Until then, the filings will keep coming, the leaks will keep surfacing, the internet will keep cataloging, and the next 72 hours could drop a bombshell bigger than anything already on the record. That's the pace now. That's the rhythm. That's the reality of watching 2 people with this much public weight try to untangle themselves, and discovering the knot keeps pulling tighter the harder they pull. Drop the thoughts in the comments. What's the prediction on that DNA result? What's the read on the reconciliation rumors with Diggs? And what happens the day that divorce finally actually legally closes, if it ever does? Because right now, the only thing the public can say with certainty is that nothing about the story is close to over. Not the courtroom battles, not the tape controversies, not the shooting fallout, not the tour, not the rumors, not the reconciliations, not the breakups of the breakups, nothing. And when the next headline drops, it'll be here. Fully unpacked, fully dissected, no half measures. Until that drops, keep the eyes peeled, keep the timelines refreshed, and keep the receipts close. Because in the Cardi and Offset saga, the next domino always falls sooner than anyone expects. And when it does, it rarely falls alone.